Yo, what is good? Today we're here to talk about Astrolancer. Astrolancer is an action-adventure game. It takes clear inspiration from one of my favorite NES games of all time, The Guardian Legend. You have different stages that have an overland area. It's called a search and destroy phase in this game. And you basically have a starting point. You make your way to the end where you'll fight a boss. And then after that, you have a pursuit phase. And in that pursuit phase, it's going to be a vertical scrolling SHMUP, shoot 'em up, very similar to what you would find in the Guardian Legend. And then you fight that same boss again. So much like in the Guardian Legend, you find different weapon power-ups, and you are able to use those either in the search and destroy phase or the pursuit phase, so the overland phase or the SHMUP vertical scrolling phase of the game. What I think makes Astrolancer a lot different than the Guardian Legend is the Guardian Legend leans more heavily on the adventure side, and Astrolancer leans more heavily on the action side. Astrolancer is fairly linear. It's a stage-based approach, so you go from one stage to the next stage to the next stage. It's pretty streamlined, and it's pretty linear in each level. Some of the later levels, you'll have maybe like a path to the end and a slightly longer path to the end, but they basically start in the same place, they meet up, and then they end at the same place. So there's not a lot of exploration, whereas in the Guardian Legend, it's essentially like one large connected world, and you're exploring this connected overworld, and then you're happening to come across different stages that you need to go into and complete the SHMUP portion. I do like the adventure aspect of the Guardian Legend more so than just kind of the linear stage-based approach to Astrolancer. So I mentioned that there's different power-ups that you can find throughout the game. As you're going through the search and destroy phase, the overland searching portion of the phase, there are little nooks and crannies and secrets to find as you're walking around. The first thing is this thing called an EC, an energy cell. It's kind of the game's currency. You'll find these off the beaten path, like I was saying, kind of like you find secret caves and stuff in The Legend of Zelda. Game explains how to do it. It's a fairly similar process to The Legend of Zelda. You'll find these hidden like side caves. You'll a lot of times get a little extra lore from the NPCs, and then they'll give you this EC. At the end of the stage, you can spend the EC on abilities, so you can improve your damage, you can improve your health, you can improve your energy, you can add new skills. So the second thing that you can find as you're exploring the overland in each stage is a thing called an arm, which is going to be like an extended ability. These are going to be things like, if you think of Mega Man, if you use an arm, it's going to deplete the second meter that you have. And so that's your energy meter. So it's going to deplete that as you use it more. And so you can spin the ECs on abilities, or you can spin them on arms that you missed throughout, or you didn't select throughout the level. So you'll, as you're exploring, looking for ECs in some of these side caves, you'll more than likely come across a store that's like giving you the option of picking an arm, and then you'll pick that arm. So in addition to arms, you have your primary shot, which is going to be, again, similar to Mega Man if you think of it, just like your Buster Blaster, your normal shot. But you also get a secondary shot. So this is going to be just a slightly different way of firing a standard bullet that doesn't deplete your energy bar. And you can change your secondary shot anytime you hit a checkpoint or right before you start a new stage. I find that a lot of the shots aren't really that amazing. There's two of them that I think are probably worth it. I personally picked the homing shot and then just stuck with that for almost the entirety of the game, largely because it overcomes one of the issues that I have with the game. Getting into the actual review of this game, we're going to start with the pros, because we always love talking about pros. One of the major things that I like about this game is that it takes clear inspiration from the Guardian Legend. That is not a name that you hear dropped very often, if at all, in 2024. One of the other things that I like about this game is the pursuit phases. I think are very good. I think the pursuit phases, which are going to be the vertical scrolling actual SHMUP sections of this game, I think that's the shining point of this game. And if there was like a mode that you could do that was only the pursuit phases, say after you beat the game, you could just only repeat the pursuit phases and skip the search and destroy phase, like I think that would make this a really cool game. A third pro that I think this kind of shines with is the story progression in this game, or just the in general having a story and the narration of it. Guardian Legend also has like a very minimum amount of story, but most shmups, you're just not going to get any kind of story element. Maybe at the beginning of the game, you'll get a cutscene, and it's like, we got to fight enemy X, and then like, that's it. This game, you can skip a lot of the lore. Basically, you get the most story exposition at the beginning of the game and at the end of the game, and then everything in between is optional. As you're exploring and stuff, you're just going to come across NPCs, and they're just going to give you some of the background lore. Moving on to the next pro, I'm always in for a game that allows you to do your own build. So I do like the fact that you can choose a secondary shot and that the arm system exists, so you can choose what skills that you're going to pick up as you go along through the playthrough. The fifth pro I'll go with here is like, I really enjoy the game's presentation. It very clearly has a certain period of video game inspiration to it. It looks like it could have been on the NES. The final pro I'll go with is the music in this game is really good. I really enjoy shmups for the music a lot, and so like when I play a shmup, even if it's not a full-blown shmup, it's just like a game with shmup elements, I always like when they do take the musical aspect of shmups, that they kind of get you going, like get you in the mood. And as we know, no game is perfect, so let's talk about some of the cons of this game. One of the first cons that I'll bring up is that I think the overworld, the search and destroy phase, is fairly linear, and that kind of, I think, takes away from the clear inspiration of the Guardian Legend. Again, like the Guardian Legend leaned fairly heavily on the adventure side. There's not really a lot to adventure and see in a lot of the overland sections. I feel like if there was a little bit more exploration in the overland sections, there'd be a little bit more incentive to explore things. And another thing that I'll mention is that there's 4 difficulty levels in the game. The lowest difficulty level is normal, and the highest is like some insane thing that I don't remember. But there's a mechanic in this game called enemy force meter, I think it was, which is basically this multiplier that gets added to the boss. And the more enemies that you kill on the overland section as you're making your way to the boss, you can decrease this down to 0, so that by the time you fight the boss, no multiplier is like added to their damage and defense, I think is what it gets added to. So this isn't a thing in normal mode. Like this enemy force feature is not a thing that's applied in normal mode. So in normal mode, there's no real incentive to kill enemies because you're not trying to get this gauge to go down, so you don't have to worry about a multiplier. And so like, I feel like you can just do this Dark Souls thing where you just run past all of the enemies because they don't drop items, they don't drop XP, they're not working towards some greater goal. So it's just kind of like, why am I doing the overland section is how I felt a lot of the times when it's like, I just want to do the pursuit phase. And like, I wish I could just do the pursuit phase. Okay, so the next con is kind of along a similar line. The stages, the stage, I think, layout for the game is very formulaic. You start a stage, you fight a mid-boss, you then fight the boss, then you go into the pursuit phase, you fight a mid-boss, and then you fight the same boss again. Third con that I'll mention is, again, kind of along these same points of just things being linear and kind of very structured. There's a certain number of EC that you can find on a stage, which means there's a certain number of EC that you can ultimately get, and that number is not enough where you can buy all of the arms, all of the abilities, and so you can't have everything. The next con that I'll mention is, I don't even know whether to call this a con or not, but the game only saves at the start of a new stage, so like the very first checkpoint, I think, or maybe even right before the checkpoint, but it basically only saves in one place. So as you're playing through a level and you're hitting checkpoints, like the game's not saving, so if you die and like quit the game, when you come back, you'll start at the start of the last stage that actually saved. Next con, along a similar line, when you start a new save, you have the choice of choosing a control scheme. So there's classic controls and modern controls, kind of like in Street Fighter 6, maybe even Tekken 8. I actually don't even know, but I think it's kind of similar. Anyway, so it's similar to Street Fighter 6 in that you can have an easier way if you choose modern controls, or it's harder. Like, it's basically like playing the Guardian Legend or some older NES game if you choose classic controls. So we come back and we review the funness of this game. Is this game fun? Is it worth playing? Ultimately, I would say yes. It's not an expensive game. I think it's like $5. I would assume that it's probably going to go on sale at some point during one of the Steam sales, or just in general. Steam games are always going on sale. So I think it's worth giving it a try, especially if you're a fan of the Guardian Legend. These are not games that come out with any kind of frequency or regularity. And so just for that fact alone, I think if you like the Guardian Legend or just the concept of shmups and adventure games, it's a game worth checking out. Are you going to kind of repeatedly play the game? Probably not. The game doesn't have achievements, and from the comments on the Steam discussion page, this sounds like the dev is not going to implement achievements. If you find it on sale, 100% give it a try. If you're a fan of the Legend of or Guardian Legend, 100% give it a try. If this sounds interesting to you and you want to give it a try eventually, maybe wait for it to go on sale and then grab it when it goes on sale. But in general, I think it's a fun game and worth at least playing through once. I feel like I've just been coming across so many like games that have links back to the Guardian Legend, and like I said, it's one of the games that really got me into gaming, and it's one of my favorite NES games of all time. So I was super happy to come across this game and then give it a try and play through it, and I'll just be on the lookout for more games like it. I think there are some other games that I've played that I've greatly enjoyed, so I'm going to be doing reviews on those, so please look forward to that. And I guess until the next time, deuces.